Welcome to this meeting of the Gainesville City Commission General Policy Committee for Thursday, December 11th. I'm glad that you're here. We have a relatively brief agenda in front of us, but that doesn't mean it will be short. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, we have the adoption of the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as printed and distributed. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, we're on to the approval of the minutes from the November 13th, 2025 General Policy Committee meeting with the recommendation the General Policy Committee approve the minutes from the November 13th, 2025 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the minutes as printed and distributed. Any public comment on that?
There's no public comment.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, we are on to our discussion items for the
Actually, but before you do that, I
Sorry.
wanted to just mention a couple things. We have a special thing or two coming up starting this weekend that I wanted us to get a little conversation about. Mr. Smith, you want to come up and tell us about the winter market, please?
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the commission. We are excited to bring before you today the announcement of the downtown winter market. We've been in negotiations with a vendor that you probably know about. The Layla Fakuri with How Bazaar and her team are putting together a 7-weekend winter festival that's going to last from this weekend on to June or January 25th. Friday and Saturday nights, the festival will start, or the market will start at 4 p.m. and last until 10. And on Sundays, it'll start at 12 and end at 5. While it extends along the entirety of the streetery, it's concentrated between South Main and Southwest 1st Street. There'll be 26 vendors in attendance at each of these markets. And we're going to have 2 food trucks. The vendor was selected because she has a wide raft of vendors that she can pull from to diversify the events and the markets. Every day or every weekend there will be a different theme, and every weekend we'll have different vendors that reflect that theme. So we'll have much more diverse offerings rather than just a singular monolithic kind of event. But we're happy to be involved with this. We think it's kind of the pilot program for how to activate the streetery going forward, and I think it's going to be a really exciting Christmas time for us. And we're able to use the garage thanks to Jesus and his team to store the stalls that Ms. Fakuri and her team are going to need to erect every weekend. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Thank you. Anybody have any questions about the winter market?
And you have the theme for the first week?
The theme is the opening weekend. It'll
Okay,
be
but there's a theme for every week, I believe.
yes. There will be theme cars the following weekend between the 19th and 21st. Community support, which is designed to raise funding for our local nonprofits. January 2nd through the 4th is going to be circus. January 9th through 11th will be wellness. Musical showcase on the January 16th to the 18th, and then the finale January 3rd through January 25th. I believe you received some fact information, and we'll be happy to answer any other questions you might have either here or by email.
Very good. Everybody, I think the community will enjoy this. Tell a friend about it. So, thank you, Mr. Smith.
We're very excited. Thank you. You directed us to do that, and we are happy to oblige.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Now, Madam Clerk, go ahead and read us
Yes,
into the
Mr.
next
Mayor.
item.
We have our discussion item for the afternoon, 2025-910 ImagineGNV Comprehensive Plan Update, with the recommendation the General Policy Committee review the comments received on the Comprehensive Plan Update, ImagineGNV, and if necessary, provide guidance to staff on next steps.
Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to kind of frame the discussion today as you all know, we were before you very recently talking about the final phase of work on the ImagineGNV comprehensive plan. And this is an opportunity today, not necessarily to sort of weigh in and make any sort of decisions, yay or nay, on anything, but an opportunity for you all to see the input that your colleagues have submitted. There is still time for you all to complete and provide any input as we move forward towards the January, I think 22nd meeting. But we wanted to have this as a waypoint for you all to have some follow-up discussion. I do appreciate everyone. I think everyone has shared information with us and met with staff, and I think everyone's very engaged. Appreciate everyone's the commission's work to date, and of course staff's work to date on this. We're excited to move forward. Just one note. I think as we've discussed, we provided a timeline at the last meeting. We are still endeavoring to adhere to that timeline, but as I mentioned before, if we get to a point where we're having to meet certain advertising deadlines, or if we just need a little bit of extra time as a body to discuss, we do have we will exercise the ability to send a letter to the state related to our years. So, but we are trying to endeavor to wrap this up and move us along on this project. So,
Very good.
with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Edelton.
Thank you, Mr. Persons. Welcome, Mr. Edelton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, and thank you, Mr. Manager, for the setup there. So, yes, exactly that. If you all recall, just certainly for the public, or just in hopefully helpful summation, that we brought our draft to you at a previous meeting, and you all requested, and at the recommendation of staff, had a timeline or a deadline for you all to review and get back to staff, and then submit your suggestions or ideas for what should be incorporated. We've received a lot of good information and suggestions, not only from commissioners, but from some of the plan board members and other community groups at this point in time. Of course, some of those items, as we talked about the last time, staff is either ready to speak directly to, whether they're looking to incorporate those or adopt those. Then some other items we're ready to answer some questions on. We have not had full time to do an analysis for those, but can still answer as to whether or not we have seen those or looked at those, or whether that's something that we might be able to recommend. And I will be here today to answer a lot of those questions. And then, of course, our planner, Nathaniel Chan, is here to answer some of those questions as well. So as the manager mentioned, we're not really here as staff looking for specific motions or approvals or direction. It is really largely, as we've discussed, the opportunity for you all to say, here's what I've submitted to staff, here are my ideas, here are the things that I think you all should be considering. Commissioners, is this something that is of interest to you as well? And really to have that more public discussion about the things that you all have submitted to staff. So with that, I will be here, obviously, to make myself available to questions.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Edelton. Commissioner Buck.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate you clarifying that. I thought so. Basically, for the framework today, it's, you tell us you've received all our remarks and the different backup and things like that. And then if we had specific questions, we would pose those today, and then you'll bring us back. For example, if there was substantive policy potential change, that's something we're going to discuss at a future date.
Yes, sir. Or even discuss them today, but, not necessarily with actual decisions that are being made. So,
No,
I'm sure.
I'm comfortable with
Yeah.
that. So what you've provided us thus far in the draft, are you all receiving some of the remarks now that you've kind of posted and people can pull up the remark in that software, that proprietary software program? Are you getting some remarks via that mechanism?
We've gotten remarks. Have we gotten, and this will happen more this afternoon too. I'm going to have to, because of the nature of getting things submitted, I'm going to turn to staff to provide me maybe some more updates on
No
it.
problem.
Have we got a response through Conveyo, Mr. Chan?
Good afternoon. I'm Nathaniel Chan, planner for sustainable development. We've gotten a few responses so far, and we're working on, you'll see right now on Conveo, there are two documents actually. It's the ImagineGNV draft that we had shared with you all before, and there's also the sort of data analysis companion document that I know a few of you were looking for as well. That is also posted on there, and we are putting that also on the city's website.
Thank you. So two other questions. So I guess you're taking all the feedback that's provided and you're really synthesizing that to see, number one, is that what it should be in the comprehensive plan? If it's a policy change, it's going to come back to us anyway. Otherwise, it may be a language, terminology, make sure it's consistent with what we know at the state level and things along those lines.
Yes, our plan is for the next time that you all see this, which will be on January 22nd at your next meeting, we will have synthesized and gotten feedback from all of you, the plan board, and other community groups that we're trying to meet with, and have all of that together for you by that meeting. It is a challenge because, as you know, it's currently 200 pages. We're getting 200 pages worth of, maybe someone's interested in this, that, or the other. So we're just going to work sort of during the holiday and the beginning of January to try to get that to you. Hopefully, do your best.
Well, it was very helpful for me when Director Singleton, you had some of the staff meet. Our session went like this. Here's some questions. What does this terminology mean? Can you clarify this for me? And here's some sticky notes and notes on various things. I just found you all have probably done the same, but I found it was very helpful for me just to go through and provide that and hear that they were considering it, and then we'll take to make sure that it's consistent with what we're doing. So I appreciate that very much. One last clarification question was, at the moment, no zoning, other than the stuff we've already voted on as a body, nothing has changed substantive in what we're reviewing now. Right.
That's correct.
That is correct, Commissioner. There are no associated proposals for land use or zoning change along with this comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, the meeting was very helpful for me. I found it to be very, very valuable, and the expertise provided was terrific. I'll remind, if we have something like the QR code on a flyer we've talked about, or something we can print and bring, that's something we can...
We have those, Commissioner.
Ready to go, because we do have some community meetings over the next few weeks. We might be able to drop a stack of them at a given community meeting.
Yeah, thank you for that suggestion. I have that here for you. I'll give it to the clerk to, he's got some,
So my,
to give to you. So I'll just show that here.
I'll just say, Nathaniel Chan, that's what I'm talking about right there. So that's terrific. Thank you.
Very big thanks and shout out to the communications team for helping us out with this.
So it's got the QR code where you can go onto Conveo to comment on both the draft and the data analysis that are posted on there. We're making it a little easier as well. On the city's website, you'll just be able to click on the PDF that'll be there and comment that way, so you don't have to go to a separate website. But the QR code should work for Conveo, and it gives an overview of the comprehensive plan, the background of it, what we're aiming to do, sort of the city's vision and mission with this plan update, and it goes over the chapters on the right side as well. So anyone that is interested in comprehensive planning, it's very hard to bring to an interesting forum and format, but the purpose of this is to make it so if you know nothing at all, but still are interested in how the city of Gainesville is planning for its future, you can just pick this up and get a little glimpse about what the comp plan is and what it's aiming to do. So the middle part really is that that detailed portion of goals, objectives, policies, and indicators that are in the comp plan currently, and it goes over what the document is and what it aims to do, and gives examples for each of those. And then on the right here is the timeline of meetings that is essentially the same timeline that you all viewed before, just kind of rearranged in trifold can fit here. But this doesn't include any other engagement that we're doing. We're also going to put a separate table on the city's website of different events that we're planning to go to, have a table, have some flyers, chat about the plan, and that'll be separate and companion to this. And then on the back is just some contact info for how to reach us and provide feedback.
I know you've been point for much of the ground zero work. This is super. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. Commissioner Eastman.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you guys for all of the work. It's been, I've been having a lot of fun kind of digging into this comp plan and looking at, other comparable comp plans like in Florida, which of course we have our own kind of funny statutory requirements around that, but then looking at Austin or Madison, I kind of have a series of, similar college towns up and seeing how they discuss themselves and how we kind of figure out how we move forward with all of this. And I've been so for the last couple of weeks I've been trying to get my head around the comprehensive plans, our comprehensive plan, how that compares to other ones, and then meeting with folks like talked with a bunch of plan board members this morning, as a lot of them have been very interested in kind of going through and marking things up. I'm sure you'll hear that when you bring it back to them. Meeting with certain builders in the community that have gone in. It's not a very large group of people that care a lot about the comp plan, but there are a very small group of people that care a lot about what is in this and think, particularly people that have gone through urban planning, that really see this as a document that really matters, both in terms of the overall vision and the policies inside of it. So I guess my the timeline, as you guys point out, is tight. I appreciate you guys doing all of the community engagement and everything. Hopefully we can get that through. I'm comfortable with us kicking this back if we're not at a point where we are where we feel like we can send this to the state and we feel very comfortable with what's in that we're getting that crosswalk, as Commissioner Willits talked through, what are the exact changes and everything. So I submitted a number of revisions that are in the backup here as well. And I kind of want to, and there's a lot of things it's a huge document. There's a lot of different portions of that. So I guess I kind of just want to start off kind of putting it into chunks, which is the easiest thing to talk about, which is the narrative sections that we have. I want to start with that because with this comp plan, you have the narrative, right, which gives us the context of what we're talking about. Underneath that, you have the goals. Then you have the data, the indicators we call them, and then objectives and policies. So overall, on the narratives, I submitted. I don't know if you guys had taken the time to look at all of the narratives and everything. I found what I was hopeful to get, and I think this is important for any visioning document that comes out of the city, is our ability to sort of talk about ourselves and what our community is, how we want to go forward, and do it in a way that doesn't shy away from where we are falling short, but also is very, positive and kind of strikes at what we like about this community and what makes us special as a community. And it seems like the narrative section of this, it was kind of a mix of it came from different places. Part of it seems like it came from HR&A, the original consultants. Some of it looks like it was internal. Some of it, I guess more to the point, can you tell me more about how the narratives came to be and where those are and how we got to where we are now?
I think your last description there is accurate. So some of the structure or skeleton of it was based off of the original HR&A report or really deliverable that they gave back to the city. Some of it since then, of course, has been reviewed internally by staff to be edited to bring it back up to what, sort of the general staff recommendation or thought was. Of course, now there's the time element that has gone into that. And so as you all have asked us to go back and make sure we're looking at this, re-reviewing it, we've edited it again. All of that to be said, that those narrative sections, I think, and this is both at the professional level but personal level, are something that make the document a little bit more, or a lot more, approachable. In general, comprehensive plan documents don't really give this kind of narrative for why is this document even contemplating this kind of stuff. And this is where you can, if you're not a planner, if you're not really diving into this, then maybe this is where you can start figuring out, why are these decisions being made at this level or this forum at all? So I like the narrative sections themselves. Other jurisdictions don't even have them. But I really do think, of course, like this is where the voice is. So if there are things that you all are seeing as commissioners that this, to your estimation as a group, but both individual commissioners either does or does not match a voice of the community, then this is exactly what we're talking about today, hopefully.
Yeah.
I will say I thought and I'm happy to hear if anyone else has any thoughts that they read over the narrative, but I thought for some of the HR&A ones, they were very hyper-focused on, just to be candid, the inequities, historical issues, things like that I think are important to include in there. But for some portions, like our future land use, the how we build section, I mean, that was the entirety of the narrative was that. Well, to me, I mean, when I think about how we talk about Gainesville, we talk about, like, especially how we build, I mean, talk about the walkability near the University of Florida, our tree-lined streets, our historic neighborhoods. That was kind of missing from the narrative. And I think, finding ways to include, we need, when you talk about the narrative of the city, there is the things that you're coming up short on and the history and all the things that were not as good. But then I think that you have very few opportunities to speak positively about who we are as a city. And I think our comp plan is one of those, at least in the way we have it structured. Most comp plans don't have these narratives, as you pointed out. But so long as we have it in there, I'd like to have it. So I submitted a series of kind of narrative changes that were in the backup, but I don't know broadly how my fellow commissioners feel about the narratives as they were. A lot of them, the different chapters are all very different from one another. So like I felt fairly strongly about the idea that we need to be we need to be selling a positive visual of our city within those narratives. And so I put that into backup. I don't know if anyone had any extra thoughts about the narratives or their thoughts overall. I saw that you had some comments or Commissioner Book about like where did this data come from? Do we have backup on some of that stuff, which I thought was good. I mean, if we're going to be putting it into the comp plan backup, it needs to be verify that that's in there. Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So that's all I have for now. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? Commissioner Willets.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I had, some kind of small specific things that, between the two, like gated communities is one that, like, I think we should continue to have a prohibition on gated communities. And I know that some of this can be off in other places, land development code, but to some degree, I like the idea of being in the comp plan. So that when we say this is our vision for the city, that it's clear to both our neighbors and residents, but also anybody who's trying to develop. And then overall, the encouraging connectivity versus more the spelled out parts of why and how we do that. Because I've encouraged, there's a lot of times where all we're doing is encouraging, and I understand that partially because it's an area where we may not, either we can't necessarily mandate something or it becomes cumbersome. But when it comes to connectivity, I think we actually have quite a bit of ability to mandate. And so I like more of that spelled out directly as opposed to the word encourage. Just because the connectivity, it's not good enough to encourage. And I think the connectivity is something that this has been a path for, now decades of not just in the city, but overall city urban planning is headed down that path. So that was one. And then thank you, Commissioner Eason. One particular thing that you put in here that in you're going through, your number 14 priority for city-wide public improvements, core areas, in essence, core areas, old policy, versus areas of demonstrated need. And I think that's something that we need conversation before we change it, because I'm on both sides of it, because core areas, how do we define it? Core areas, and I don't know if it's defined in, is core areas defined in our comp plan, or is core areas something we just have to interpret?
Apologies, Commissioner. Core areas in reference to
Citywide public improvements.
I am not aware of specific definition for
Policy
a core area.
1.54, I guess I have it in front of me. I promise this is part of a larger, more interesting conversation. I really do. Discourage the proliferation of urban sprawl. Cities should prioritize core areas to receive first enhancements when the city has planned citywide public improvements such as sidewalks, street repaving, undergrounding, utility street lights, and public parks. And I bring this up because mobility plan is a chunk of that. and there's going to be some other parts that are, parks and I think we've had a little bit of this. We talk about it and we kind of go, even I will go both ways on this. Core areas, the most urban, the most dense, closest to where people live, closest to people work, go to school. So it sounds like it's a little nebulous. And so if it's not defined, and of course this is suggesting going slightly different to areas of demonstrated need. And I want to talk about this because on one hand, it's under the discourage the proliferation of urban sprawl, which I agree with, and it sounds pretty good. But at the same time, sometimes when we talk about equity, in essence, sometimes we shorthand and say equity, but it's because it is about areas of demonstrated need where we say, this is the situation, and are we only going to do it towards the core, or are we going to reach out and build that sidewalk? It may be not as central to the city, and if we don't define core, then I need some definition. And I don't know that I don't want this portion to get in there without some further discussion of it, because right now it's in the sprawl section. It's not in the and I'd have to see where it would fit best about how we describe basically equity. About sometimes we are prioritizing not in the core, we're prioritizing somewhere else. And I'm a firm believer of, like, if we were building a rail line or light rail, you put it where most of the people are now, not on the outskirts where people will be. That's my personal belief. And that's the core first kind of theory. But on something like sidewalks, parks, whatever else it is, urban forestry, if it does need to go towards this areas of demonstrated need. But I think that it is important enough in our conversations about equity that I think we need to talk about it, or at least feel it and grasp it. Because if that's the way we're going, it makes a lot of sense. But if it is going to be in the comp plan, I think, I want to know what the core areas are first. Core areas first. I would first like to know what that is before we change away from it, because if it's that definition. So do we have a definition of core areas for that policy?
Commissioner, I think that's a very appropriate question and very helpful. So exactly where we do find ourselves today, where there is this lack of clarity, that is exactly where we need to define it more clearly.
Right.
And so obviously, the city's approach and planning and goals span the entire city. So if we have policies that are intentionally trying to refer to downtown, the central area, we need to be clear about that. But if we do have policies or approaches that are trying to speak to core needs, that's a different thing, or ostensibly is a different thing. That core at that point could be a neighborhood or actually the specific goal that you're trying to approach.
Right.
And depending on what that individual topic is, it may be more appropriate to have that in the comp plan, or it may be appropriate to have that in the land development code, or it may be appropriate to have it in both.
Well, I think the reason why, because areas of demonstrated need could also mean, it could be there's just nothing there, so we need to go there. But it could also be it's already a super dense area, so per capita X is needed, right? And I'm sure we could argue that is the demonstrated need because per capita. With parks, we talk about distance. Overall, we talk about parks per capita in our kind of parks master plan. And I'm sure there's some of these other figures where we could say, well, it's really per capita, and that's the need. And so if that's where we're envisioning that demonstrated need, because on a per capita basis, it may still focus very core, perhaps downtown or university or where schools are, but then in other cases, demonstrated need may be on the outskirts of Gainesville, but it would be because it's a demonstrated need because nothing exists, or we combine it with what we understand about equity, about socioeconomic factors. So I want to fully kind of grasp that, and I think it could be very useful because we do identify demonstrated needs for all those there's lots of different ways of defining it and finding it. So anyways, that's one where I just get a little worried about going that way because it's in the sprawl portion specifically. It really is designed to say you need to get as much investment, I believe, core areas, meaning the closest to population center, commerce center, probably school center, university, where people live, work, and do those things. So anyways, that's one. Thank you, Commissioner Eastman, for including that in your list. I was able to meet with staff as well, and so I'm not going to talk about all of them here, some of it. and also forward along some of the plan board, because I wanted to kind of hear what they had. So thank you, staff, for having done this, and I think this is a good step in the process. So thank you for working. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Willetts. Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you. Well, I haven't had a chance to meet with staff, but I have enjoyed reading the narratives. Especially for someone like me who's not a planner, it made it very interesting. My interest is in the section on cultural identity and on historic preservation, and I'm trying to find historic preservation. I think in the narrative, you identify some key points, and one is that with low-income residents who are less likely to attend city-organized cultural events, in addition, arts and cultural programs and services have not reflected the demographic makeup of the city, nor addressed the varying needs of different communities. And I'm wondering if we make a stronger statement about that in looking at our components. So that would be one I'd like to discuss with you after the holidays. Now, and then if you could provide in the narrative or someplace how you determine what is a historic designation. We talk about Pleasant Street, but Fifth Avenue is does not have a historic designation. And as you all point out, there are many, many historic elements there. So if you could share with me at some point how we can address that. And I'm not sure if we make a strong statement on downtown centric and how we could better distribute throughout the city development. So that's an issue, an area of concern for me. I'm trying to find my other one. Oh, and do we have I'm moving on to historic preservation. Do we have an inventory of currently underrepresented areas? I think in policy 4.2, I believe that's where you mention it. That there, yeah, 4.2.4 is where you talk about the inventory, but do we have such an inventory? I'd like to get information on that of currently underrepresented areas while we define some of them. Okay. All right, and then my other issue, concern, this is on the housing. I'd like to discuss a little bit more on, I think, from policy 1.19 on through 1.110. While you talk about a task force to improve coordination between governmental agencies and those agencies, I would like to see a stronger message on engagement for the residents, people in the community. And I guess you might say you addressed that in 1.24, but anyway, that's what I'm looking for. You get the gist of what I'm after there.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and goal 3, I'd like to have a little bit more discussion on that area. And let me see. And that's about as far as I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. Commissioner Eastman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think as it relates to, so when I was going over all the policies, a lot of what I tried to do was to look, because it's a complete rewrite of the comprehensive plan, right? And so normally we would go through a process where you'd say, okay, well, we have this policy in the old comp plan, right? And then we think that, the state statute doesn't require that, like sprawl, for instance. Apparently that used to be a requirement. State statute is no longer in there. So some of the explicit language about sprawl has been taken out just because it was previously required. But okay, so we're getting rid of that. We're adding this in. We think that this is useful because there's a whole rewrite, just trying to get an understanding of what has changed and what, and what hasn't, right? And so one of the things that came out to me, and you kind of, both Commissioner Willis and Chestnut mentioned it, is there was less of a downtown focus. Well, there was a strong downtown focus in the current comp plan, and is not really so much in this one. But there's not really much of a location focus just in general. There was talks about East Gainesville more in the current comp plan, but I mean, but also there was talk about the innovation district. At least in the 2013 update, there was a lot of things within there, and so. One of the things that you said that, you're right, that I brought forward was just trying to figure out how to add an objective in there that would at least get some kind of location-specific thing within the, that would bring back, I still think that it's a good idea to have the innovation district as a goal that we have here at the city. It's one of the, it was very much in vogue in 2013 when the current comp plan was written. We were really doing a lot of great partnerships with UF on that area. During the pandemic, that kind of dissolved a bit, but it's still the main walking corridor between UF and downtown, and through our main city area. And just in general, having a restating that downtown is kind of our central area, not in a way that that has shalls or policies in there that require various things, but just. Putting that back into there. And that's what, if you guys look in the backup, a lot of what I have in here is just simply looking at what was in the old comp plan and saying, I think that this was good and I think it should continue to be brought over. For instance, there was a thing about greenways and trails that was in the recreation section. And that was a whole objective, which I tried to bring back to some, to add some of, I think that's back in there, but add some of the language like on the Hogtown Creek Greenway on prioritizing misconnections. Same with the greenways and trails transportation that was in the current comp plan that I don't see as much in the new ImagineGNV comp plan, though. With the mobility plan in place, I'm not sure, in the mobility fee that we just passed, I'm not sure how all this fits into there, but a lot of what I have here, as I said, is really just trying to figure out, okay, I'm looking through the old comp plan, some things you can see why that it was created. You can read it and say this reads very 1984, like it's or 1985, like it's talking about corporate parks and various things that were a real thing that we were contending with in the city back 40 years ago. That might not make any sense to have within there, but there's some things I think that are quite useful. But one of the big things in here, and going into the policies, which are in the backup here, and I'm happy to answer any questions about what I submitted in, but the indicators, and that's another thing that I don't see a lot in other comp plans. I mean, I see there's a data and analysis section that is required by state law, but there's not these ongoing indicators. Can you kind of talk about those indicators overall, how we got to them, how we're hoping to use those within this comp plan?
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner. And there's several parts of that I'd like to speak to that are important and certainly get the body's feedback on. So the location-based information, I think that is a very important question. And our comprehensive plan as it is today sometimes speaks about things very broadly, and then sometimes you all have probably noticed it's very specific about a very specific development in a very specific element. Our advice and recommendation from the planning staff is to use that future land use element as your broad brush for the city. That's the best place to start from, that allows all of the property owners, all of the people that are involved in our city to know sort of like this general idea of what you can expect in this different area. And if it is to have a very specific feel or form or uses associated with a downtown specifically, then our recommendation is to talk about that in this land use manner, this land use way. That being said, you will see both in our current comp plan and in what we're proposing references to areas or other plans. So East Gainesville, Innovation Square. We can and should still speak to some of those more localized or more specific plans. But again, the recommendation, just recommendation from staff, is that in our comp plan, it starts from this overall, here's what we're sort of thinking of as a community where these types of uses or forms should happen. Oh, but also, we have also entered into these other agreements. We've had these other relationships for example, Innovation Square. And that in this area, it should look like this, or maybe there are uses that we're contemplating that look like this. That can go in the comprehensive plan, and I think in large part or in some part that should go in there, but probably by reference to the plan or plans that are in place. Now, at this moment in time, that's going to be for both staff and you all to decide, is the plan that's in place something that is what you're wanting to reference again at this moment in time? Or is it something that also needs to be updated? So I know that's a lot of kind of planner speak about multiple different plans that are pointing to each other. But for this comprehensive plan part, really, again, the overarching thing, I think, is that land use that creates these districts, that starts talking about specific locations, but in a very broad way that sort of separates the policy and the decisions from what might necessarily be specific landowners or specific things that you're seeing on the ground. So I think that's probably enough of riffing about land use from me as a planner.
So wait, so you're saying that you would prefer, because what I tried to put in there was policies that spoke broadly to, we have a vision of downtown as being the central area of town, right? So it's not, it is not enforceable, but it is, more visioning statement that it should have walkable and pedestrian connections with type, that may be useful in case there's a redevelopment or something, but mostly is more visioning in nature. And you're saying that you would prefer that the future the table of future land uses would include that instead, or what exactly,
So the districts, really, those land use districts in the comp plan say, like, the downtown should look like this, right? Like, it should be our tallest, highest, and has a whole lot of a variety of mixed uses. But the city does also have its downtown strategic plan that talks more in detail about exactly these kinds of areas that we want or programs that we want to see there. Those are the kind of things that, in general, for a community, change faster than this overarching idea about the way that we think or want to plan for our downtown. So in our comp plan, our recommendation would be to speak about this downtown, but then point to more specific plans that may be operating or pointing to more specificity on either a block by block or, even an area basis. And this would be not just for downtown, but perhaps for Innovation District, perhaps for East Gainesville, or perhaps for other areas or districts that this commission or future commissions define.
all right. And then, thank you for the clarification, but then on the indicators in particular. What are
The indicators question, thank you. The second part to that. So the indicators here, really, again, this is something that our comprehensive plans and many comprehensive plans in Florida does not really include for how are we going to measure this squishy thing that we just talked about that's important to us. So our goal or intent here with putting the indicators in was to say these may be things that we'll measure to actually get us some good data for how we are or are not achieving these goals. So a big gap, admittedly, even an honest planner will tell you to this day that there's a gap between comprehensive plan and data-based decision making. And this is our intent to both kind of offer up suggestions for things that should be measured, but also still trying to keep it open for adding other indicators, or we find out, in 3-5 years that these indicators don't make sense for what we're trying to measure. But these are really in here to try to say, we are going to turn towards data-based decision-making. Here's some things that city staff should be thinking about.
Yeah, I think that's great. I like that idea a lot, and even if it's not in other comprehensive plans, it makes sense to me why you would continue to have that followed up and why that would be measured in the comprehensive plan. The concern that I've heard from some folks that know comp plans better than I do, or people that have worked on comp plans for many years, is that because those indicators are in the actual comp plan that we're sending to the state, they're kind of put into stone in a way. And so one of my recommendations was to see if there's some way that we could strip that out, incorporate by reference a separate document that could be more flexible internally. So it's still in the comp plan, which seems to me to go further than most cities do in terms of using measurable updates, but is not as locked in stone as literally being written into the comp plan itself, and just that's more operational. But the comp plans are funny because they're kind of the constitution of your land use and your planning overall. But So deciding what you want to have be firm and what you want to have be flexible in the future. And I do get concerned about the data we're collecting as being one of those firm things. And so it's how you do that, I'm not really sure, but that was one of the recommendations I had for you guys to look at.
For staff's recommendation, it is kind of walking exactly the line that you're talking about. Typically, or to date, these kind of indicators or specificity are not included at all. But on staff, we believe in having data-based decision-making. So we want to try to add in as much teeth to doing that, pursuing that, while also, of course, being respectful of changes in time, history, commissions, political decisions, but of course, for our operations decisions that may need to be made at different moments in time.
Yep. All right, perfect. Thank you, Forrest. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Eastman. Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, so with the indicators and achieving success, once you feel like you have achieved success by your indicators here, do you leave that goal alone, or do you come back, do you leave it alone for the 10-year period, or do you come back at some point to keep reassessing?
I may leave some of the more detail of this answer for the manager and our operations officer, but for my intent, for what I would direct staff, is that we really don't ever, fully achieve any goal. We just keep working towards more and making everything better. So if we do have plans or specific programs that are trying to achieve this decision or this goal or this data, then we will report that both internally to other staff, to you all, and to the public. And really, of course, it's to you all and the public to decide whether or not we met our goals.
Okay, all right, and then my next question is on community engagement. Looking at our schedule, how will you incorporate any input from responses from online or in community meetings? How will that be incorporated into this plan before we send it to Tallahassee, or before it comes back to us for adoption? Is there a deadline that the community organizations should get their information to you?
The best next deadline, and there will be multiple, but will be at least a week before your next commission meeting at January 22nd. If we can get as much of that feedback as possible prior to that, then that will allow staff to do as much of their analysis of their suggestions and be able to give you all the best information backwards.
Okay. Thank
for,
you. So
for
January
what that
22nd.
means. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. So I will certainly have, I don't see any of the lights right now, but I will have suggested edits and a list, and I'll want to sit down with you all before the 22nd. We'll work through some of these. Working through this is a good way for the community, anybody interested in doing it, and specifically for policymakers, including the plan board, to think about things critically in a different way than we normally do. I mean, we tend to think in terms of what is before us right now. What land use and zoning change is being brought to us today. This is the framework for how that fits together. And it is in some ways in concrete, that it is in some ways broad guardrails for what we do for the next decade. But much of what we do for the next decade is brought to us by things, I don't want to say outside of our control, but that we're not anticipating. I mean, we look back over the last 10 years, there are a variety of things that are different than what we would have expected, both things that have turned out very well and things that have not turned out so well. And that's going to happen for the next decade too. So it is important that we do this. It's one of the reasons I really want us to stick to a schedule, a timeline to getting it actually accomplished, because we've been talking about this for a long time. And I want to bring it in for a landing so we can be about the work more than about the idea, which is difficult to do in Gainesville because we are about ideas. And the work happens regardless. I mean, it comes at us, and I want to make sure that we are directing the work instead of it just coming at us. as a community. So those are just some of my thoughts. Commissioner Book?
Yeah, did you have more, Mr.
No,
Mayor?
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay. So just a few random thoughts, kind of to finish up my remarks is, when I looked the way you structured even the brochure, the goals, objectives, and policies, that's right out of the state statute, word for word. And so that's terrific. So if folks with that expertise will be able to go there and go, well, where did they get that? It came from right there. So I'm going to assume right now and know that's very intentional on you and your staff, and it helps them understand that. And Commissioner Eastman made a good point. He talked about a very small percentage of people may be interested directly in the comprehensive plan, but almost everybody's interested in the impacts of the comprehensive plan. So when are people impacted? When they're here for a zoning and land use, and then they've never even looked at the comprehensive plan, and then we're bound in a quasi-judicial manner in the way that we vote. And that's why this document is so essential that you get it as 100% correct as you can get it, because it's going to impact our future votes. And everybody's concerned about it then, even though they may not have viewed it. But you're right, the term comprehensive plan, very few folks may go through. I did like, there was a lot of talk about data and indicators. I think that's really good. When I was looking, the statute is 13 pages and it's very bureaucratic. But it does say that the comprehensive plan shall identify procedures for monitoring, evaluating, and appraising implementation of the plan. Well, how you do that is via indicators. So I think, I think that that's a good thing also. I think we agree. And then it talks about that the data has to be very vetted. It doesn't have to be stuff we create. You can use other data. The term data in the statute is probably used over 100 times. So they must from a state statutory standpoint, the capability for us to appraise or evaluate how we go. So I thought that was good. Director, just a question. One of the lines that I did not realize, it says we must coordinate our local comprehensive plan with the comprehensive plans of adjacent municipalities, the county and the region. How are we going to do that?
So we are required in a variety of ways to provide the notice to these jurisdictions for any sort of changes as a part of the process itself. But we absolutely can and are open to reaching out to them directly to see if there are things that they would like to speak to.
I know the different municipalities around us, there's kind of some very different thoughts about how they go about, their future use. So that's good to hear. You had a good pickup, Commissioner Willis. You talked about urban sprawl, and right now it says they discourage urban sprawl is actually in this statute, and yet what you said is we have to figure out where there's density. We need to make sure there's no gaps. And if I understood what you were saying, but where we want to be, we need amenities out there, right? Is that kind of was your thought there?
Yeah, and there's a bit of a balance, right? You want to plan for the future, and so you want amenities where growth is like already happening, and I think we all agree something at the same time. The current resident, and this gets to part of somewhere else the future residents of the city and current residents. So there's this balance. So thank you for mentioning that.
No, I agree with that. If there's a gap in our existing density or something, somebody can't get somewhere, they can't get to a job, they can't get on transportation, we need to address that now. But we also have to prepare for how we get them to the areas that are not yet built in a very intentional way. So I thought that was good. My last comment was, I think you had mentioned you're going to have a lot of linked documents, so that you may not necessarily have another 200-pound bicycle plan, but the bicycle plan will be referenced there, and the land use may be referenced here. And the maps are obviously a component, and that's kind of how we're going to build out the comprehensive plan to make sure that all our other documents have some continuity there.
Yes, kind of sort of three answers to your thread here. So the first one for the data, yes, in large part, the city statutes allow the local jurisdictions to make their own plans, but in short, you got to be able to back it up with why you made these decisions, which is the data. So that is where we as staff will come in and say, these are the goals for the community, here's the data that supports that. So that's the sort of first part. We will and are required to present the data for that. And I'm sorry, you had the two other follow-up sections to that, and I'm
Well, we just, I was just trying to make sure I understood Commissioner Willetts' comments, and I agree, which is, you attempt to appraise where you need things now, but also how you get people to where they need to be in the future.
Yes, thank you very much for that. Yes, it is absolutely an exercise of planning for the needs that there are today, but of course, a plan that both is required of that 7-year, 10-year, and 20-year time frame is intended and required to plan for the people and our neighbors that are coming here next. And the major part of the requirements for the data is this population growth and statistics that are associated with how many people are coming here, where are they going to be, and what may be the types of services that they might require. And that is really the purpose and the intent of this plan at all.
Thank you. I'm with you, Mr. Mayor. I think we adhere to the timeline as much as possible, and we have to get it done next year. If there's a week delay, that's not a problem. If we're into 2027, that's a concern. I mean, right? And the reason is because we're making incremental changes all the time anyway. So every change we make now then has to retroactively be put in a plan. Once you have the plan, we're set for a period of time, unless the dais decides, comprehensively that we need to make a change to a particular section. That's one of probably the best reasons get it done now. So thank you for indulging me there. I appreciate it, Mr. Mayor.
And I did remember my third part of my answer to your questions here. So a lot of the statutory language refers to maps and the city and the jurisdiction keeping maps. And that language is typically written in a way that is for physical maps, like a physical map set that really it used to be that was the case for planning departments. There was a map, sometimes they even had the giant map on the wall, and that was the map. And then when you made these mapping changes, it was physical. You went and you drew it. I remember we had a planner who would go and change the highlighter color on the map that was on the wall for the land use and zoning. Today, it is our map that is online. It's updated as soon as those decisions are made. It shows the current land use and it shows the zoning. Those are the maps. Our interactive development review map that is on our website is the title of that. These are the future land use and zoning maps that the statute is referring to. So just hopefully helpful for the public that maybe is looking for physical maps, which our statute actually really the language kind of speaks to some of that. These are the maps. They're digital and they're on our website today.
Very good. All right, thank you, Commissioner Book. We'll hear from the city manager, and then we'll go to the public. Mr. Manager.
This is the problem when you have a planner as your city manager. They can't keep their mouth shut and feel like they need to jump in. I did want to highlight two things I think that I heard today from the commission that I think I was very happy to hear. I think one was Commissioner Chestnut's comment about while you're not a planner, reading the narratives kind of helps provide kind of a feel for where the city's going. That is was originally the one of the hallmarks of the new plan was we wanted to create a document that was more accessible and more understandable from the public. Our current plan does not have any sort of narrative sections, and it just jumps right into to the goals, objectives, and policies. So that was important with that. And then to Commissioner Book's point about, and Commissioner Eastman and several of you talking about the indicators, that was another aspect of the original impetus from the plan, was to have a plan that was more measurable, that was able to be tracked over time to see how well we were doing. There are a number of, I think, good examples of, while there are not a ton of jurisdictions that have gone this route, there are some, and I think I was recently looking at what the city of Orlando does. Essentially, they at the end of the year, they publish information about their indicators that they have in their plans into a separate document that gets shared. That's something that moving forward as a city, I think we, from leadership perspective, we want to get back into tracking KPIs across departments and integrating certainly the things that we're tracking in the comprehensive plan with other documents in the city, the strategic plan, the budget, it's always been a goal. And knock on wood, if we have a relatively stable year in 26, and we're not necessarily responding to a ton of fires, that we'll be able to, figurative fires, that we'll be able to really spend some time on the organization side, building that out. And certainly the comprehensive plan is a very good start to that effort. So, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Manager, Mr. Eastman, and then okay, all right. Madam Clerk,
Mr. Mayor, we have Kim Tanzer.
welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commission. A couple of comments. First of all, I hope that the comments that you all as commissioners are making will be available to the public. I didn't notice any when I was looking at the Conveo remarks, so I don't know where they're being housed, but that would be useful. So I hope that you'll do that. Or if you have them, you can tell me where they are, and I'll look for them, of course. Secondly, I signed up for the constant contact notification on land use changes and haven't received any notifications since I started. And I would think that this, since it affects everyone in the city, should be pushed out through that mechanism as well as in other methods. So I hope that you'll do that. Looking at the plan itself, and I have only done a very high-level overview at this point. I haven't gone through line by line. It strikes me as, first of all, as many of you have said, a really good step in the right direction. And so I appreciate that and all the work that went into it. At this point, it seems like, as Commissioner Eastman said, it's kind of undigested in that all the parts aren't working together. And it's very, very ambitious in some ways. I did an AI search asking AI to find all the indicators in the plan, and I counted 93. And each of those 93 indicators requires collecting and then updating data. And it's not clear, I hadn't seen the data that you put up online recently, but it's not clear that you have the benchmarks to start from. I've operated, as many of you have, in environments where you start with, you have X number of units per acre or X number of linear feet of sidewalk or whatever, and then the goal is to improve, but you have to know where you start. And there's no evidence in the plan that you know any of those numbers yet, and it's a lot, and it's a real lot for your staff to try to keep track of. So I think that, I hope that you'll maybe be less ambitious in what you're asking for, but more dutiful in actually collecting it and trying to improve on those indicators. Because I definitely think it makes sense to try to measure them, measure what you're doing. I wanted to mention that, and I have two things, sorry. I wanted to mention that Gainesville Neighborhood Voices Board has approved in concept having workshops, and we're beginning to develop an idea for those. In order for people to have time to go through the chapters, we think that we'd like to do 2 workshops and do maybe 3 chapters, 1 for each of the workshops, but not all 6. However, we can't get started until mid-January because one of our board members is going to be out of the country, and he's important in coordinating. Just to let you know that that's where we are on that. And finally, speaking for myself now and listening to the discussion here, and as you all know, I am very interested in urban design and local urban design in particular. What's striking to me is that this is such a great opportunity to really think about where the city wants to go. I was very, very involved 20 years ago with the master plan for the Depot Park for 2 years and all of the surrounding neighborhoods. My students and I did the preliminary visioning for what became Innovation Square, among other things. We did that 2004, 2005, before anything started. They had a lot of community input. There was also a lot of community input for the update in 2015 or whatever, which focused on new urbanism. This is a great opportunity to do that, but there's not a mechanism for that to happen. And our workshops also, at least as planned, are not that mechanism. What I'm seeing in what you talk about is a central downtown in a traditional city format what I see outside is something different. The most vibrant centers are Millhopper, the Walmart on 34th Street, parts of Butler Plaza, parts of East Gainesville. They're not downtown. And so what's being built and activated is not what the plan is heading toward. It's the same with housing. The tall buildings are not downtown. You know, maybe you wish they were, maybe I wish they were, but they're not. And I think that this is a really important opportunity for those of you who are decision makers, those of us who are paying attention, to really think about how should this community be shaped over the next 10 years. Because there's a mismatch between the document that you're creating and what's outside. And so, and as you can imagine, I would be happy to talk with you in more detail about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was our last speaker, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Commissioner Eastman.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Danzer. I agree with you on a lot of things. But first, just to start off, all of our comments are in the backup on the agenda itself. I don't think, I guess, I don't know how they would get added to Conveo, but yeah, ours is right now. All of my comments, Commissioner Book, Nick Hill, who's on the plan board, he had, which is something else I wanted to mention, is that speaking of line by line, I hope staff looks at Nick Hill, who works on comprehensive plans professionally. He has a lot of good, feedback about, a lot of things that are over my head that, we're mixing up, the capital CIP with the CIS, like things that are very, very, very useful that I think would be that everyone should take a look at. I'm glad you mentioned the activity centers versus urban core, because I think it's that seems to be like kind of the struggle that a lot of these comp plans, like look, Austin had a traditional urban core and then it went to an activity centers kind of model. And that's kind of what and that's sort of what Commissioner Willits was speaking to in a way, is how much, historically we've always, and our transects are designed this way, where you have your urban core is your most dense area and then it goes out. And of course, if you go, on Wynn Meadows by Butler Plaza, you'll notice a very dense area that's very walkable. And if you go, north over to Thornbrook, you'll see a very walkable shopping center. There's, there's houses in there. It's not very dense, but it's, and I would love to get into that at some point. The question of industrial land, if South Main becomes mixed use, where do we have enough industrial land in the future? Where these sort of things, this is a very ambitious process as it is, and that kind of standard, EAR review is would be something that I think I would love to do at some point while I'm on the city commission, but I don't know if that's certainly not this process, and it would be a lot to ask staff to do with that process. But that's a very good process that we clearly haven't done since I'm looking at the backup. I mean, 2001 is the data information that is in our backup, and so it must have been since at least 2001 that we've done something like that. And I think it would be useful, because I think you highlighted a lot of inconsistencies in how we think about where our density is, where it would go. On the indicators, I also agree that the indicators seem a bit ambitious, and I think what I think is very good about starting off with the indicators as they are is I can go through old budget books, for instance, and they'll talk about miles of road that have been paved or miles of linear sidewalk that have been created, and then depending on which city manager, that might go away the next year, it might come back. And I do think having a consistency in saying, what are how quickly is our fire department, like what are the key indicators that our fire department uses about time to get to where they need to go? Is that moving in the right direction? How is our GPD working? How are these various things? How many people are showing up to our events? How many events are we putting on? Sometimes these things are sort of neutral, like more events that are less quality aren't as good as maybe having one or two events that are of quality, but it is an indicator that is worth looking at year over year over year, and we've been kind of inconsistent as to how we put that forward. And I think having something that is referenced in our comp plan that would allow us to kind of look year over year as to where our city is going would, for me, be very, very useful. And I think that we have a good opportunity to do that. With at least the starting point of the indicators that you guys are recommending going forward. So thank you for all your feedback, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Eastman. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't want to maybe slightly correct. I think Commissioner Eastman indicated or sort of alluded that the year was somehow a different process than what we're doing now. Like the your process, to be clear, like is a specific statutory process that's laid out in statute requiring local governments to review their comprehensive plan every 7 years. The like many of the data points, I think, in terms of like vacant or available acreage, by land use category, a lot of that aspect is done through the year process. It's also something that we've done with this. So I don't want you to walk away with the impression that like somehow there's this completely different way to look at your updating your comprehensive plan as laid out in statute than what we're doing. So
That's fine. We're not updating the land use maps, right? And I think that's very intentional that we are not updating the land use maps. That is a whole can of worms that we do not feel like opening at this particular time. But I think at some point opening up those land use maps, saying, do we have enough density here? Do we have enough industrial land there? Do we have enough mixed use there? Is a worthwhile endeavor that is very staff intensive, and I'm not asking us to do at this particular moment, but I think would be a useful thing to do at some point. Yeah.
I figured that's what you were talking about. I just wanted to make
All of these state terms I'm not entirely clear on, but yeah, that's what I was getting at. Thank you, Mr. City Manager.
All right, thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, Commissioner Eastman. I don't see any of the lights.
Oh, I pushed the wrong.
Commissioner Wellens, go ahead. No.
So I wanted to mention, and so some of this, we're not really opening up the entire, future land use, but partially, specifically, thank you, Ms. Tanzer, for mentioning, because in Commissioner Eastman mentioned, like, Austin went to the idea of activity centers. It's called different things in different places where they have like a tier 1 and a tier 2 and a tier 3, and it really is like where across your city are you going to have this concentration? And we talk about a little bit about job centers. Obviously, with UF and Santa Fe, we understand that it's where you live, where you work, where you go to school. But so that's a piece when we say what do we envision the city to look like, because the truth is downtown is only one concentration of a certain type of commerce housing. We want it to be more diverse, but the truth, like Butler Plaza is like where Gainesville shops, and to a large degree also partially where Gainesville lives if you look around, and so we achieve some of that through our transect zones, just plopping them down, and we don't say it's an urban life center, urban activity center, but when you zone something U7, that you've decided this is your mixed use urban center, right? And we had a sector plan in north of Butler Plaza years ago, probably 15 years ago. We had a sector plan that is that kind of idea of an activity center. So I understand the urge to have that in there, and I agree, because we know the reality, that's how it develops. And then we go look at special projects, but we don't actually have a master map of them in that way. And that's a decision that whether we don't really like that, whether community, we'd rather continue doing the transect zones in chunks rather than a more like targeted, you put pins on maps and you say everything from here, it's going to be, U9 at the very center of it, and within 400 feet it goes down to U7, or, and so you have these pockets. Ms. Tanzer's right, that's how it actually is out in the world developing. And so I appreciate that idea. I did have one specific question. It is a big chunk, and it is in future land use. I think it's about the Idlewild Serenola. And I'm sure this was in here because maybe we thought we were going to annex more of that from the county, but we've only annexed a small portion on Williston Road, is my understanding. And so is this staying in here because of potential to annex into the future? Just the Idlewild Serenola study section, a special area study.
Thank you, Commissioner. We're not proposing to change any of the special area studies or designations for strategic ecosystems or anything of that nature at this point.
Is it just that it was in here originally? I'm a little behind. It was in here originally because, originally it was a county area, not in the city.
Right.
But because we envisioned potentially some annexing?
You're absolutely right. So a lot of these area plans or specific plans really in the Southwest were created with this kind of idea that is where the city was growing at the time. And certainly over time, we've seen that has been the case, and that's where the annexation has happened.
Right. We did annex some of Idlewild Serenola,
Yeah.
Serenola, but not not all of it, not as much as potentially could. So I just kind of wanted to ask that.
And now to say all of that, if there are elements of that that, of course, the commission, the public want to revisit and review, now is the time.
Well, I'm sure people, the current level of trees being cut down on Williston Road have some people upset. And so it's odd because the portion that is being cut down, at least some of it is in the original study area that was not yet in the city, and now it is in the city, and where the VA facility went in. And we did dump a lot of, they dumped a lot of tree mitigation dollars into it. And so, at the time, I should have gone back to the comp plan and looked at this. We had already talked about and focused on that special area. And it talks about trying to keep as much of it in tree canopy areas and whatnot. And so this buffer, it builds up my argument that anything that is in the Idlewild Serenola, when they pay $700,000 in the tree mitigation fund, we should probably spend, not just that I want it in my district in Southwest Gainesville, but this plan already established, the comp plan already talks about how important it is. We probably need to double down on spending that money in the area, which is hard to do because if we only annexed 100 acres of it, and now 100 acres is developed. Anyways, I want to come back to that later. I had not tied that to the comp plan portion. And there was one area about, and I know this is still future land use, and we're not going to get into too much of that, but with the idea of activity centers, one portion of this policy 1.38, encourage options to allow small-scale corner stores near residential development. Nicholas Hill had some comments about that. Fayetteville, Arkansas recently created an urban neighborhood zoning that gives a zoning type for it, as opposed to encourage and as opposed to going up to jumping all the way to either a transect or working within some of the other mixed use. So anyways, I just throw that out there. There are some other possibilities. The urban, I see Commissioner Eastman nodding his head. And I know exactly where they implemented it. I know the corner, I know the houses, and so it's an interesting idea. So that's more traditional for folks. That would be like what we see on Fifth Avenue, where it's literally, part commerce, part a city building, a restaurant, a cafe, homes, just 100 feet away, 50 feet away. And it all kind of works to some degree. But some of those can be non-conforming. It's just history has given us that. So, and then I only have one question about in the housing section, 1 point something, or here's one of the indicators, percent of cost burdened households. What's the cost burden? Is that Alice or is that a different indicator?
I would have to look for if any other staff can respond specifically
Mr.
to
Manager,
that.
you hit your button right there.
I did,
so
yeah,
you have an
I
answer.
can answer that. It's cost burden means anyone that's paying more than 30% of their take-home income to housing and utilities.
But Alice is slightly different.
Right, Alice is a
Right.
different definition, which I don't have in front of me, but it's essentially like being cost burden. You can be cost burden and not meet any of the income qualifications in terms of AMI. That just means you're spending more than 30% as the rule of thumb.
Alice specifically asset limited.
Exactly, yeah.
Income constrained.
Right. Those are folks that typically, as you know, typically are working, may not meet the income thresholds for things like affordable housing support or what have you, but still struggle to be able to pay for basic services, essentially, like working poor, if as another
Right.
like kind of.
So I bring it up as it's maybe something, whether we want lots of indicators in here because it is hard to track or promise, but so I brought Alice up. And the only last thing, sorry, this wasn't future land use. Policy 1.3.1, it specifically talked about regulations, including arrangement of functions, and it has loading in there. Loading is just very important to me about what we've seen developed, so I just wanted to poke that again about, I like that it's in there, and probably I would prefer more stuff flows around that and we have more conversations to make sure when we're approving plans. In the day of FedEx and UPS and Amazon, and who knows the next thing that we decide that needs to be delivered to our doorstep, that loading is more and more important in our mixed-use urban multifamily in our transect zones, potentially even in single-family zones. Maybe, I don't know what the future holds, but thank you so much for all of this, and I understand staff. Thank you for listening, particularly to Plan Board, community members, and this follows much more closely to, I think, the process that some people wanted and that I feel more comfortable with. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Willetts. Commissioner Duncan Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have had the opportunity to meet with staff, sat down with Mr. Edelston and Mr. Singleton, as well as interim manager. So I'm going to reserve my comments about the literal plan until we reconvene, because we are going to bring some things back that I asked them to bring back to me. But I just wanted to make this statement that I feel is really, really important to make. We have amongst us in our community some real experts who give freely of their time and their expertise. And I think that the Gainesville Neighborhood Voices, Ms. Kim Tanzer, Dr. Kim Tanzer, as well as Dr. Peggy Carr, I want to say a special thank you to all of you for convening these workshops where you're making this information accessible to the public and giving it to them in bite-sized pieces, because this can be a very intimidating document. But to the point that my colleagues, a couple of my colleagues have made up here today, everybody's concerned about the impacts of this. So I wanted to give a very special shout out to all of you for that work. I envision that as being in tandem with the work that we're doing here. So thank you so much for working hand in hand with the city to make sure that as many individuals in the community understand what a comprehensive plan is, what its implications are, and pulling them deeper into a real engagement process with them. Thank you all for that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Duncan Walker. So the thing about having conversations like this is that while we have the conversation, we can go off on a variety of tangents, and I came up with 1 million of them myself here while we're having the conversations. It's going to be important that if we are to have an updated comp plan, that we at some point say, all right, this is when it comes in for a landing. Because there is no end in a community like ours, on a commission like ours, to the number of side roads that we can take with this. Because it is interesting and it is important. And one of the things that caught my ear specifically was the idea of activity centers, however we want to term that. I very quickly put down a list of 20 different activity centers around our community. Downtown is always going to be downtown. Every community that I'm aware of has a downtown that is a downtown. Whether it is the area that is of most impact, it usually is the thing that continues to live decade after decade, century after century. It is a constant. And how important it is, it waxes and wanes over the decades. But every town's got a downtown, and it's a thing that you build around. The health of the community is often the health of the downtown. Downtown will always be important, but there are a whole lot of we'll just put a pin in the term activity center, the innovation district, the airport industrial park / gateway area that may or may not be the first thing people think about now, but it could be very quickly turn into that. The Northwest Industrial Park out at we're talking about loading centers. Off of the 121, and then I got to thinking about the whole, all the Weyerhaeuser property north and east of that is going to be very different. Trust me, very different in 10 years than it is right now. There are folks out there that aren't talking to us yet, but will bring us at some point thousands of new homes, hundreds of new homes at the very least, out there that we're not even thinking about right now, that is going to change how Gainesville works. And then 10 or 20 years after that, there will be another thing that changes how Gainesville works, that rebuilds something or builds something new. We don't have a lot of greenfield that is the only real greenfield that we have out in the north 121 area. But there are going to be redevelopments that change drastically. Some of these activity centers are relatively small. Grove Street, the Fourth Avenue Food Park, but those are serious activity centers right now. When we talk about Butler Plaza is not necessarily just where Gainesville shops, it's where the region shops. I mean, we don't realize often because we don't have regional conversations, but that is important to all of North Florida. People come from Valdosta regularly to shop at Butler Plaza. Maybe sometimes more than people in Gainesville do. But Gainesville gets to enjoy the fruits of that. Some of those fruits are traffic. The fruit is always not tasty. But the tasty fruits of it are, if nothing else, the revenue that comes from that. And we are beneficiaries of that. And Westgate has long been an activity center and will continue to be an activity center because two major state roads cross there. We go on and on with this. The E. Hetty site is a thing that 10 years ago was not contemplated really, but now is a thing. And 5 years from now will be an even more important thing that draws folks to a part of the Hawthorne Road area. I would love to see more attention given to 5 Points, Waldo Road area, and that's something we just haven't talked about much. But the infrastructure exists for that to boom. I'm interested to see how our GCRA investment of $2 million in the Duval neighborhood succeeds so that we can learn lessons from that and maybe flip the next thing we do to that 5 Points area. Maybe there are lessons we can learn that we can, move around to other areas that are, the point is that they're going to change things. So downtown is going to be a thing. How good a thing it is will depend on some things that have to do with the city, some things that just happen around us. But there are 19 or 20 other parts of the community that are going to be important. Do all those get listed in the comp plan specifically? No. The comp plan is much broader view. It's the 20,000 foot view. But we do all of that when we do the comp plan. We have to keep in mind how all these other parts of the community interact with each other. And I know it sounds like I'm rambling, but these are the side roads we go down when we start having broad discussions about the comp plan. But all of that is to say that we have to bring it in for a landing at some point. And my hope is that 2026 is, as Commissioner Book mentioned, is when we bring this in for a landing so that it gets done. And then we start working on the next one after that. But we've had this out there as a thing we should be doing for a long time. And we owe it to the community to focus and get this one done. And I'm glad that we are working in that direction. And I appreciate everyone's work on this. I know that there are at least 2 or 3 community groups out there working hard with ideas on this, and their input absolutely will be part of it. And we should all be talking about this as we talk to folks in the community over the next couple of months about how they should engage through this very useful little document that we can pass around with its QR code on the front to get people at least thinking and talking about it as we move forward. And I know that our media, who is sitting at home watching this and taking notes and trying to figure out how to put all this into an article, will hopefully include things like that QR code as we move forward. So I'll see any other lights. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, member comment.
Okay, this is our last meeting, y'all, before the holiday break. We will see everybody at MTPO next week, of course, but that's not a Gainesville City Commission meeting. This is we will be bumping into each other a lot over the next several days over other community events, but this is the last time we sit down as the Gainesville City Commission until January. Any last thoughts before we get rolling here? Mr. Manager?
I wanted to thank the commission for making this transition into this interim position very smooth. I've really enjoyed working with you all directly in the last 2 months or so, and so looking forward to continuing into the new year. I know staff is very excited. We'll have a lot of very exciting projects coming out of the ground next year, and looking forward to it. So thank you. Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you. I enjoy working with you. I miss still working with Ms. Curry, I got to tell you. But I want us all to be prepared for what is going to be a very, very busy year in 2026. We got a lot of projects that we've been quietly getting ready to roll downhill, and those things are going to come out of the ground next year. So it's going to be busy. It's going to be fun. There's going to be a lot of community questions about all of those projects. So keep that in mind as we move forward. And see you for the light. So happy holidays, everybody.